Hi everyone, welcome to Kitaabi Cabins. मेरा नाम चारू है and today we are doing my 6-monthly annual wrap-up. This year has been such a strange reading year for me so far. I was in a horrible reading slump. It was kind of a space that I wanted to read but nothing was holding my attention for too long, and this list contains all of that. Some books were my instant favorites, some left me conflicted, and some I am still not very sure what I feel about. The first book we have on the list is The Setting Sun by Osamu Dazai. This book is set in post-war Japan and we are following this aristocratic family that is slowly fading away. And Dazai's way of writing is just so devastatingly beautiful. Like, you'll start reading it to the third page and you'll feel the sadness in his writing seeping through the pages to your heart. इतनी पतली सी किताब थी, but still it had so much to offer. There were so many symbolisms: snakes as bad omen, the grief of losing a parent, watching your family fall apart, and still learning how to live with that loss. The book is so heavy, but it's so beautifully done. And if you are planning to pick it up, be very careful about the translator you pick. That will make a lot of difference in your reading journey. The next book on the list is Pinjar by Amrita Preetham. If you're someone who has only heard of Amrita and love stories associated with Amroz or Sahir, I think you're really missing out. Amrita was such an incredible writer, and I think it's unfair to just reduce her to this romantic figure, and you should not be sleeping on her actual work. Pinjar is set around the partition, and it is more about identity, loss, and what it means to live a life that you never chose for yourself. And that is all I will say, because I will just give away too much about the book if I start explaining the entire plot of it. I remember deeply enjoying the book discussion we had about this one in our Chalchitra book club. It was one of my favorites from this year so far. The next book on our list is The Vegetarian by Han Kang. I saw this book everywhere. It's a very popular book. It was a buzz on Bookstagram a while back, and I thought maybe it's my turn to read this book as well. But I think my timing was horrible because I was already in a reading slump, and this book just made it worse. I just couldn't bring myself to care about the characters as much. The writing didn't seem to move anything or stir anything in me, and unfortunately I had to put the book down. Another book on this list is The Orbital by Samantha Harvey. I actually picked this book up around the same time I was reading the book Vegetarian. I think that was the recipe for a disaster. None of these books helped me come out of my reading slump. I could not enjoy these books. The book followed some astronauts as they orbit around the Earth 16 times, but despite the fascinating setup, I just couldn't seem to care about the characters as much. And this book unfortunately also joined my DNF pile. The next book is Rukh by Manav Kaul. The book is a very personal travel memoir of sorts, where Manav Kaul returns to Kashmir where his roots lie. The writing of the book is very simple, but it's still very deep and carries this longing for a land, this search to find a belonging to a place that you can call home. This year I also revisited old books. We love rereading in here. This year I read Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. The book is about friendship, dreams, and loneliness in the time of Great Depression, and it's just a very nice read. Another book I read was The Poems by Fernando Pessoa. This wasn't even a reread of sorts, but I just keep revisiting poetry again and again. Pessoa is best at what he does, at crafting poetry out of the mundane life and making it feel infinite and intimate at the same time. Another book I reread this year was Art and Lies by Jeanette Winterson. Jeanette Winterson is a master at writing. Everything she writes is such a delight to read. This book is a lyrical exploration of art, identity, and truth. Another book I reread this year was Notes of a Dirty Old Man by Charles Bukowski. I reread this book because Kritika Pathak and I were discussing our thoughts on Charles Bukowski, and this book kept coming up again and again, and especially while rereading this book, I could see the raw genius people talk about when they talk about Charles Bukowski's work. The next book on our list is Desperately Seeking Shah by Shanaya Bhattacharya. I love this book with a kind of loyalty that is very rare. It is such a smart and layered book about class, pop culture, love, and what Shah Rukh Khan means to an entire generation of women who grew up watching him. I remember we had a very long discussion about this book in our Chalchitra book club, but this book is untouchable for me. I will not hear a single bad thing about this. Absolute 10 on 10. The next book on the list is The Anxious Generation, and I have already talked about a few ideas that I really enjoyed from this book. The book explores young people's anxieties, alienation, and the search for meaning in a world that is so chaotic. The next book on our list is A Gentleman from Peru by Andre Siman. I didn't love the book. I didn't hate the book either. It was just a very soft, bland reading space for me. The same author of the book also wrote Call Me By Your Name, which is one of my top favorites. It didn't hit me as much as Call Me By Your Name stays with me to this date, but it was a good filler book. I didn't hate it either. The next book we have on our list is Grief is a Thing with Feathers. This is such a beautiful book. Itni layered kitab hai ye. I think I'll be doing it an injustice if I'll only be talking about this book for a few minutes. It's about a father who is doing his PhD on Ted Hughes and is also mourning the loss of lost wife with his 2 sons. And after this sudden loss, he is visited by this strange chaotic figure which is named as Crow in the book. Porter takes this original metaphor from Ted Hughes' poem The Crow, but the crow we are introduced here is very different from the crow that Ted Hughes introduced us to. The crow we have here is very tender, it's very warm, and it will stay as long as the grief stays. The book is so tender and layered. I feel like I will still need an in-depth study to understand all the references and symbolism Max Porter was trying to put in the book, but nevertheless, I really enjoyed reading this book. It made me cry at so many places. Would definitely recommend. The last book we have on our list is The Fall by Albert Camus. The book was very nice to read and it took me out of my reading slump like that. And yes, this was my half-yearly wrap-up. I think I've touched upon almost all of the books that I've read. If not, I must have made a reel or a dedicated video on the books as such. It has been a very strange reading year so far. I want to start reading more. Hopefully, we will change that in the second half of the year. And if you have been here so far, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being kind, and I will see you next time.